All right, let's talk about climate tech. Because the world of climate technology has just been through a brutal reality check. Now here in 2026, all that hype, it's gone. And in its place, a totally new, completely unexpected race has kicked off. This is a race to power our future, and it's being driven by a force that honestly almost nobody saw coming.
So here's how we're going to break this all down. First up, we'll get into the great climate recalibration, what that reset really looked like. Then we've got to talk about the AI demand shock, this huge new challenge that's popped up. After that, we'll dive into the solutions, how we're actually powering the grid and remaking the material world. And we'll wrap up by looking at the new bottom line, what all this means for investors and even entire countries.
Okay, so let's kick things off with this recalibration. What does that even mean? Well, basically the speculative kind of Wild West era of climate tech. It's officially over. We've totally shifted gears from just dreaming up these big moonshots to the gritty, real-world work of actually building things at an industrial scale.
So what really happened? Well, 2024 and 2025 delivered what you could only call a bruising reset. That big market bubble, it burst. And it filtered out all those speculative ideas that didn't have a clear path to actually getting big. And that forced a whole new, much more pragmatic tone on the industry. The new mantra became, prove it works and prove you can make money doing it.
And you can really see that shift right here. The old way of thinking was all about venture capital just throwing money at moonshots. But the new reality? It's about industrial execution. The money is now flowing, but it's going very selectively to technologies that have already proven they can scale. The big challenges aren't just about invention anymore. They're about the nitty-gritty details, like getting permits and managing supply chains.
And of course, policy is a huge part of this new reality. Take the US, for example. When some key tax credits got rolled back, it suddenly compressed the timelines for everyone. You can see how the projections for renewable growth got revised downward. And what that does is it forces developers to get way leaner, way smarter, basically to race to get their projects up and running before the rules can change on them again.
But here's the thing. Just as the industry was starting to get its footing in this new, more pragmatic world, bam, a massive demand shock wave hits. And it came from a place that, honestly, very few people in the climate world were fully prepared for: the explosive growth of artificial intelligence.
See, the new demand isn't just for more power. It's for 24/7 power, nonstop. The big tech giants, the hyperscalers, they're building these enormous data centers, these GPU farms, to train their AI models. And this has created what's being called an energy tsunami. They have this insatiable hunger for power that's not just low carbon, but also constant and reliable. And that completely changes the game from just relying on renewables that come and go with the weather.
And this quote from the 2026 Climate Tech Horizon Report, it just says it all. The convergence of AI and energy is dominating strategic thinking. I mean, think about that. All of a sudden, the biggest problem for climate tech isn't finding money or dreaming up new inventions, it's a straight-up shortage of clean power. The whole game has been turned on its head.
Which, of course, brings us to the single biggest question of 2026. If we need this much clean, reliable power, and we need it right now, where in the world are we going to get it?
All right, so how is the industry actually supposed to meet this massive demand shock? Let's take a look at the real, mature, and scalable solutions that are being deployed as we speak. And just to be clear, this isn't science fiction. This is the stuff that's actually powering our grid today.
Take solar, for instance. We're seeing a huge leap forward with something called perovskite silicon tandem cells. Now, perovskite is just a synthetic crystal, but it's unbelievably good at absorbing light. So by layering it on top of the traditional silicon panels we're all used to, we've just blown past the old efficiency limits. We're talking over 34% now. And that is a total game changer, because it means we can generate way more power from the exact same amount of space. Think about what that means for urban rooftops, or even putting solar on vehicles.
And the scale of deployment here is just staggering. I mean, this is not a niche market anymore. Just look at some of the milestones from back in 2025. You had Australia running its grid on over 50% renewables for a whole quarter. In the EU, wind and solar actually generated more electricity than fossil fuels. And then there's China. I mean, China added more new renewable capacity in just 1 year than exists on the entire US grid. This is a massive global industrial shift in real time.
Okay, but we just talked about how solar and wind come and go, right? So how do you get that 24/7 power that AI data centers are demanding? The answer is something called long-duration energy storage, or LDS for short. And this isn't your typical short-term battery. LDS technologies are designed to store huge amounts of energy for 10 hours or more. That's how you build a reliable grid even when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing.
And it's not just one thing either. A whole family of these technologies is coming online right now. You got electrochemical solutions like iron-air batteries, which are aiming for more than 100 hours of storage. You even have mechanical systems that use gravity to store energy. But the key takeaway here is that these ideas are moving out of the lab and pilot phase and into commercial-scale projects. They're providing the stability that a modern, clean grid absolutely has to have.
So, solving the power problem is one huge piece of the puzzle. But what about all the physical stuff that builds our world? The next major frontier is decarbonizing what they call the hard-to-abate sectors. I'm talking about the very building blocks of our civilization, things like steel and cement.
And to really get this, we have to talk about a concept called embodied carbon. It's basically the hidden carbon footprint of everything we produce. Think about it. Cement production, by itself, is responsible for something like 8% of all global CO2 emissions. So if we're serious about getting to net zero, we absolutely have to deal with the carbon that's embedded in all the materials we use.
And this is where AI, of all things, comes back into the picture as this revolutionary tool. Researchers are now using AI models to discover brand new, low-carbon formulas for things like cement, and they're doing it up to 500 times faster than the old ways. This quote really captures it perfectly. It's like having a digital cookbook for climate-friendly materials. It's just accelerating innovation at a pace we've never seen before.
The way we're starting to make green steel is a perfect example of this whole new way of thinking. So instead of using coal, the process uses clean hydrogen to pull the oxygen out of iron ore. Then, that pure iron is melted down in an electric furnace that's powered by renewables. And the result? You get steel with practically zero carbon footprint. And the best part? This isn't some far-off dream. Commercial-sized batches are actually hitting the market this year. Okay, so finally, let's talk about the new bottom line. How have the worlds of finance and government policy actually grown up to support this new era of, well, just getting stuff built?
While the investment world has definitely matured, after that big reset in 2024, we saw this big surge in mergers and acquisitions, with large companies snapping up proven tech. Now here in 2026, the door for going public is opening up again, but the entire mindset has shifted. Investors are no longer interested in hype. They want to see realistic valuations and a clear, believable path to actually making money.
And it's not just investors, national strategies are changing too. India's 2026 budget is the perfect example. Look at this, it's not just climate policy anymore, this is straight-up industrial strategy. We're talking billions for carbon capture, for securing supply chains of critical minerals, for building up domestic manufacturing for batteries and solar. Climate tech has become a core piece of national energy security. And you're seeing corporate actions scale up to match all this. More than 10,000 companies. Let that sink in. More than 10,000 companies now have their climate targets validated by the Science-Based Targets Initiative. This has moved so far beyond a fringe movement. It's now a core part of business strategy for literally thousands of the biggest companies on the planet.
So what does all this add up to? It leads to one really powerful conclusion. The green premium is dead. That old idea that you had to pay more for the clean version of something, it's over. It's obsolete. The winning solutions of 2026 aren't expensive novelties. They're pragmatic, scalable technologies that give you a clear economic and strategic edge.
And that leaves us with one last big thought. We've officially moved from an era of invention into an era of execution. The technology, it's here. The money, it's getting a whole lot smarter. So the defining question for the rest of this decade isn't, can we invent it anymore? It's much simpler and much harder. Can we build it all fast enough?